How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? I really appreciate the opportunity to join you today. My name is Greg, and I am from Supreme Parties. What is Supreme Parties? Well, we're a professional DJ entertainment company that has been around since 1994, and we do everything: weddings, bar mitzvahs, sweet 16s, anniversaries, corporate events, Spanish, you name it, we do it all. You can find us at supremeparties.com. That's SUPREMEPARTIES.com, and you can reach us at 888-877-2270. Again, that's 888-877-2270. Professional DJs at your service, there for you from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. every single day. And we're the real deal, by the way. We don't use playlists. If you want to change and you want a real DJ and you want to have a great party, call us. You tried the rest, now try the best.
Alrighty, welcome to episode 293 of Backpacking America at the Barone Media Solutions Studios. I'm joined today by Fred Hicks. He is what is your position with Adelphi University?
It's fairly recent for me, but I am the Associate Chief Information Officer. Full title is Assistant Vice President and Associate Chief Information Officer. So it's a mouthful.
So you're the so if I call you an Assistant Chief Information Officer.
Associate
Chief Information Officer, that would be the correct title.
Right.
So what are the duties of your role? Like we talked about it briefly. It seemed very, very tech oriented. That's why I was very interested in talking to you.
Right. So, I mean, traditionally, Chief Information Officer is in charge of all the information systems that run the company. So databases, information that are in those systems, making sure it's protected, making sure that, we do regulation compliancy. But I'm kind of like the second in charge. So, traditionally, I've come up from the tech side, right? So I oversee infrastructure, servers, networking, endpoints. I have the saying when I introduce myself at meetings, and it's I'm in charge of everything that is part of the network or connects to the network. And that's been part of my job for like the last 26 years. And then in September, at the beginning of the school year, I was promoted to the Associate Chief Information Officer. So now it's more relying on leadership, mentorship, and then strategy. I have to see where the school's technology is going in the future. So I have to make sure we're in alignment in the industry vision. Like, what do we want to be working on? Where do we want to be? And then, overseeing, staff development, making sure that the people that are on staff have the skills required to keep things going, and that, staff retention is really important. Probably during COVID, the tech industry got squeezed with something called the Great Resignation, right? Mm-hmm. So people just got up and left and went to other organizations. And they could demand dollars, and they could demand and negotiate, benefits. Like, being in higher ed, we would get 5 weeks of vacation. I mean, not many companies can match that. However, during that time, companies would just want to pull people in. They were recruiting everybody. You want 5-6 weeks vacation? You got it. So I lost a lot of staff. So wow. Staff retention and development is also, part of my job.
So when we were in the throes of COVID, what was something that Adelphi did to keep people on, or at least a strategy you guys implemented in an attempt to keep people?
We really embraced work-life balance, mm-hmm. right? So, being a school, online teaching and learning happened. A lot of the workforce went remote, mm-hmm. and people like working from home. So we embraced that. So that, that flexibility allowed people to, stay in their current position. But, even as the restrictions were lifted, we kept those kind of work from home arrangements in place because it was just favorable for people. The whole industry went that way. And, so we were flexibility in the work schedule, where you work from. You'd be really surprised when you look at the systems, people logging in from Florida. We haven't seen them for weeks, but they're doing their job. They're just as productive. So, for leadership, it didn't matter where you were. If you're there are some jobs that require you to come on site. But for the most part, it's back office, clerical, administrative work. Didn't matter where you were, as long as you got the work done. A
lot of industries have seen that shift.
Absolutely.
I mean, even with commercial real estate, technically commercial real estate, the bubble burst already, and you could rent offices or buy properties at percentages that were unheard of for the last 10 to 15 years, because a lot of people are consolidating their office spaces. They are consolidating their companies even.
Yeah.
Outsourcing is a big thing now too.
Oh yeah, outsourcing. It's certainly a push. If you want to, save money, if you want to, have 24-hour on-call workforce, but there's a balance you got to do with outsourcing. It's not just we take these positions and we'll put them to a managed service provider, an MSP. A lot of stuff in our industry, especially in higher education, is custom built, right? So it's not standardized, packages and software where you can just say, oh, we're just going to give it to some company and they're going to run, right? We're running a system that's 35 years old. It's been customized over decades. So the code and everything else that runs our business, someone's not going to be able to just walk in off the street, take a look at it, and be like, I could do that. I could run that. There's just way too much customization,
Does AI help you guys with any of that customization?
Oh, AI. So, yeah, AI's helped us quite a bit. AI took off, and, it's really interesting. AI was adopted. Like, if you use a benchmark of all the different technologies that are out there, let's say, adopted to 100 million people, right? You take a look at television. It took 45 years for television to hit that mark. It took 75 years for telephone to hit that mark, right? Radio, something like that as well. But AI took 2 months for 100 million people to adopt, create a user account of ChatGPT, log in and start using it. So you had this really big spike of adoption of AI. Then it kind of like plateaued. Then it dropped, right? Because, it's interesting. Everybody's talking about it. Let me see what it could do for me. So it dropped, but now it's going up again because now people are figuring out what AI can do for me, how I can be more productive. And it's saturating, all of the different verticals in higher ed, whether it's, administration workflows or even with students and faculty. It could branch off in so many different topics, but with AI, faculty are using it in research. They're using it in some of their, some of the things that they use to teach and learn. And, students are using it, in a lot of ways. I'm not going to say cheat, but to, academic dishonesty might be at play there, where like if you're writing an essay or a paper, prompt engineering, right? Write me a paper on this subject or outline or something.
Yes.
So students are really embracing AI. And so what we've been doing in higher ed is creating policies and frameworks of, you could use AI in certain circumstances as long as it's permitted, but you have to use it appropriately, right? I'll leave it off with this, but the importance of, or the weight that your degree carries is based off the academic rigor of how much work and effort and critical thinking you put in to earning that degree. Now, if you use AI through that whole process, what are you walking away from? What are you walking away with, I should say? Like, what's the substance in that degree if you didn't really learn when you were in college?
And that's one of my concerns when AI first came out, especially in my industry. It took over my industry almost immediately. I remember I was scrolling through TikTok, and I saw podcast reels that were like, turned out like every day. I'm like, what the hell is this? I'm scrolling, it's the same guy, and it's all these weird fonts. And I'm like, the hell is this? I can't wait, why does my program not have these fonts? Is this a new Premiere thing? And how are they producing so much stuff? So, back before that happened, I would produce maybe 3 or 4 reels for clients, for myself, and it would take about an hour and a half, 2 hours to make those reels. And then now I have AI, and I could just like it's a sausage factory.
Right.
And it's quite interesting because when that first happened, I'd have clients approach me and say, can you please use AI? And I'm like, AI? I mean, why would I need a computer to do my job? But then I was like, all right, the pressure got too much. A lot of my clients were like, do it. I did it, and I saw the value in it. I could get 30 reels, and I could program a whole month of content off of half to 75% of the time. Like it saved me 50 to 70% of the time it would take.
Exactly.
And that was so impressive. But my main concern was AI is going to take over. It's going to be cutting people's intelligence out. It's going to be taking the creative love out. But then you look at it and it's like, okay, well, yes, people use it to cheat, but you can also tell when something's AI.
Yes, you can. And I mean, and every new generation of AI gets better and better, but there's detection tools. And, when someone submits work, because I'm a lecturer too. Like I teach a couple of computer science courses. So when I see things that are AI generated, you can tell. People don't write like the way generative AI does. People don't speak like that. So there are tools that you could detect it. They're not always accurate, but it's you could tell if it's AI generated. However, like you were just talking about, you're able to be more productive with it, right? So the role of AI in higher ed and how it's playing out, especially with let's say media type jobs, is that you have to learn the skills how to use AI, right? So let's say you have your overall AI workforce, right? 1% of that is going to the people that create the AI. They create the engines and the databases and the data sets, right? Then the other 9% is going to be people who customize it, interface with it, right? Like think of it as like, the really smart engineers in the back end who create it, then the people who train it, that's the 9%. And then the other 90% are just regular users like you and me who get an expertise in prompt engineering, right? And that's going to be the future's workforce. So universities, colleges, schools need to teach new students how to embrace this technology so they could be more productive. And your example is perfect of that. You could create now, 10 times the amount of output?
Yeah.
And if you're trained on using it, your quality could be on par with how you used to do it.
Yeah.
If not better.
And now I've noticed two strategies with it now. So what people do with podcast reels is they'll make 10 of them, right? They'll get all of them cut up. They'll take the best 10 and then they'll put music into it. They'll make sure that there's AI generated images and they'll edit it more finely, which if you want something really, really creative and really different, it could be a tool for that. I come at it from a marketing approach and I try to say, okay, well, the social media is a video game and you need X amount of output to get X amount of results, which could yield X amount of clients. So it's a big math formula. So I tell clients, I can absolutely do these creative things for you. If you want me to do the creative stuff for you, absolutely. But you're using me to get more business. So if we program 30 to 120 reels, because a lot of my clients do 4 podcasts a month and you get about 30 per episode, so about 120 reels. If we pump out 120 reels a month, your viewership's going to go up, which means it's going to be more traffic driven to your website, which means you're likely to get at least 10 to 15 leads. Likely. It's not guaranteed. Right. But, I've seen people get 100,000, views and maybe they get 1 lead or 2 leads or 5 leads. But you're more likely to get leads that way than if you want me to just cut back the content to like 10 reels a month. It looks cool. Your presence looks great, but it's not going to do the same. So it really depends on like how you want to use the tools and services, because AI could be great for maximizing content distribution and maximizing the algorithm. But if you're looking at it strictly from a creative point of view, it helps you get the busy work out of the way, and then you could kind of get into the creative process. Because when you have to take a whole video file for an hour, you got to listen to it and you got to jump around, you got to find okay, this is the good one that I want. You get rid of all the other crap, you mix it down, and then you got to go back to the original project file and go back and repeat the process, and then you mix all that stuff down, you get it. It's about an hour by the time you get 4 or 5 of them good. Then you got to go back and edit it. So then that would be, you want to find music that goes with it. You want to get the generated images before AI. You would go grab your own images, put it in. Then you need to mix down all the captions. It's about an hour and a half, 2 hours to do 4, 5. Okay. So this is now, when I use AI, now it's like I create all the stuff. I have all my AI pieces. I customize the font and I schedule it for the entire month, and it takes an hour. It drastically saves time, and I'd love to see how AI can further develop, because now I'm seeing, now you could change your fonts, now you could change your colors, now you could do branding palettes with it. You could overlay images into it that you already have on your computer. These softwares are continuously advancing, and we see it with the writer strike, right? Like a lot of the writers were very concerned that AI would replace their jobs. And, the more I've used it, the more I'm like, well, it's not really going to replace your job. It's just going to make it faster. I used to think that would be the case, but it's not.
Right. You cited the worker strike, and, you know what Star Wars Day, right, is, right?
Yeah,
and that just happened, right?
May 4th.
It was May 4th, right?
So, may the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you. And then, and Revenge of the 5th the next day. Anyway, I'm a big Trekkie, right? So Star Trek Day, I think, is like April 16th, right? In universe, that's like the day the Federation was formed. So they have the celebration day just like Star Wars does. Anyway, the writer's strike was going on at that time, right? And so instead of doing like a big thing, they had a half-hour AI generated script, and then they just and they just had an actor read it, and it was terrible. You could tell it was AI generated, and yeah, it might have filled a need, it might have checked a box for something, but the engagement was terrible.
And that's the thing. Like, media is so finicky, where it's like, what I do is more marketing based. What the writers do is entertainment based, and their engagement's going to increase based off how good the quality is. That's why it takes so long. That's why it takes almost a year to make a TV show.
Right.
Because, people need the quality.
Right. And, an AI engine, a generative AI engine is only going to, it's only going to output what's input into it, right? So,
Right.
like, they use large data sets, but that's based off of generated content that humans have made over years. So it's going to make stories or whatever based off of those elements. So it's going to be repetitive. It's not going to be original. It's going to lack entertainment and flair.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it might get better in the future. I'm sure it will. But right now, you could totally see when someone hands you something, you read or you watch something, that was AI generated.
Yeah. Even the images you could see. Now, technology's changed a lot.
Sure.
Since you've started at Adelphi.
Right.
Can you walk me through how the responsibility, and I know you've had many titles with Adelphi, but in the entire tech field in working with a private educational institution, how has technology changed, and how have you had to constantly change with it?
It's actually, the parallel is not too different from any kind of industry that uses tech, right? So, I started off in tech, as a young man building computers, right? And at that time, 46 Pentiums. They're just rolling off the shelves. That's how far back it is, right? And if you take a look at the lineage of just PCs themselves, right? Every 18 months, I think that's Moore's law, right? Every 18 months, computers double in power, right? Whether it's faster CPUs, higher density of transistors on chip, faster bus speeds. So you take a look at that linear progression of computing power, and technology kind of follows that. Like with computers that have 32 cores, 256 gigabytes of RAM, right? The biggest thing that I've seen is verticalization of workloads. So I used to have a server room, right, a data center of about 250 servers, right? Each server was like a computer that you have like over there on the shelf. It just did one single thing, right? Ran an email system, a database, whatever, right? And as computing and processing power got more powerful, you're able to take those workloads and virtually stack them, right? So now I have 6 high-end servers that run the same systems, same workloads, but in a footprint about the size of this data rack right here. So instead of it being the size of a room like this, or actually twice the size, it's now less than the size of this table.
Wow.
So you get much more power in a smaller footprint, more energy efficiency. It just allows you the freedom to do more with less. It costs just as much, but technology just gets faster and better.
It's like the like when you go to Best Buy, and this blew my mind. My dad was looking for a computer for his office, and he comes home and it's like this big. It's like this little 2x2 box. I'm like, Dad, what the hell is that? He's like, dude, it was $80, and it's like a 500 gigabyte or 250 gigabyte desktop.
Yeah, small form factor kind of PC.
Yeah, and I was like, how is that even possible? I was blown away. Usually, I'm used to stuff like that big over there.
Right.
But that was specially built. That was actually built by Anthony and Jeff, and they helped me. They helped me build that. And talk about computing power. I mean, at least with what I do, I need to have a lot of power to process, the graphics in my videos, the high quality audio, and then I need something that's able to download and process stuff quick. And the computing power, like you said, it has to evolve with the technology. Every update I get with my Premiere or my Adobe systems, I'm like, is this going to be the one that pushes me to the limit?
Yeah,
or
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you have a specialized workflow that requires that computing power, but 80-90% of people, they can use that small form factor PC because what are they doing with it? They're writing a document, they're surfing the web, they're checking their email, they're going on social media. that doesn't require a lot of processing power. So they can get, cheaper, smaller, more energy efficient computing devices, and that'll suit their needs. So, I mean, that's a big change. But, it's hard to explain, but having that kind of computing power and, it makes it easier to manage, easier to run, especially when you condense things, and it just frees people up to work on more creative process, other things, and that's where, once you're freed up from worrying about your infrastructure, how am I going to back up that data? How am I going to keep the business running? You're free to start thinking about, well, what's the future of my company? What's the future of my business? Where do I need to, what areas am I not in that I can step foot in, and now I can market to those areas? So for instance, with, we talked about the enrollment cliff, right? Higher education and even public schools are suffering from, not suffering, but there's just less people. There's less children, less college-age people, right? We're actually seeing a decline in population growth. So schools on Long Island, like public schools, so let's say you have a school district of 8 schools. One school is going to dip. They're going to close that one school and bolster up the other 7, right? So we're seeing, schools shut down on Long Island just because of lack of students. And that's, it's filtering up to the higher education, right? So if I can't get enough students to meet enrollment, I got to go elsewhere. So that means international recruitment efforts. Like Adelphi's international population is skyrocketing because we're partnering with other companies, other universities around the globe, and we're bringing in students from other countries. Or nationally, we're bringing more students in, let's say, from the West Coast that we haven't been doing in the past. So but it's a marketing game. You have to have, strong people, strong marketing, and data analytics, right? Where are underserved communities where I can go say, hey, there's a school here that specializes in this. This is our cost. These are all the great rewards we won. This is a great university. We have to go to those places. So you can only make those decisions with data. Machine learning.
It's very concerning that there's a population dip globally, even in Japan, South Korea,
oh, yeah?
all of Europe. I think Italy registered a 0.50 birth replacement rate.
Yeah,
I mean, that's real. That's like the lowest in the world.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah. I remember reading an article a couple of years ago. You mentioned Japan, that their birth rate is just getting so low. They said if it stays on track in 1,000 years, Japan won't exist, because just trend-wise, people aren't getting married, people aren't having children, and there's a lot of social stressors that contribute to that.
Oh, sure, and economic as well.
Right.
I mean, it's the same. Long Island, we all know, it's like $2,000 for a studio.
Sure. Yeah.
It's just there needs to be an economic shift of some sort to allow families to regenerate almost.
Yeah.
And it's very, and there's social stressors as well. And I could get into a whole thing about that.
I know.
But another point too about college declining is also a lot of young men are going towards the trades again.
Yes. Yep.
Huge upswing in that.
Yeah. And it's kind of like the industry shot itself in the foot. Like higher education did that because, the costs of higher education have just grown over the years, right? So, there's students, if you go to private school, you're walking away with, $150,000 in debt, and now if you think about it, over the lifetime of your earning potential, that's really not too bad, because if you pay that off over time, it seems insurmountable at the beginning, but you have a college degree, right? And my degree is in social science, right? So I'm an expert in these areas. So your earning potential with a college degree is X amount higher than without, right? So if you're at the start or beginning of your career to the end, till you retire, you will increase your earning potential by 400%. With a college degree. And the higher degrees you get, the more the earning potential. Now, I'm just talking generalizations. There's always exceptions to the rule. But however, because of that extra cost in college, it's actually turning a lot of people off. And there's a lot of anti-higher education rhetoric. And it's turning people to trades, which is, there's absolutely nothing wrong with, trade. We need tradespeople, so that's totally valid. And you can make really good money in the trades. But it's, if you don't do either, and you're working retail, nothing wrong with that either. We need people in retail, but a lot of people want to earn, but without skills, without going in direction A or B, and if you're just stuck in retail without some sort of goal to gain a marketable skill set, you're not going to have, the opportunities.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know a lot of people that try to find a third way, and third way is only opening a business, but that also requires a lot of hard work, dedication, sleepless nights sometimes.
Yeah, you got to you got to hustle. I mean,
Yeah.
I just interacting with you, I could see it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is a lot of work, and a lot of people don't realize that. Some people say, and I used to run my business out of my bedroom, and there was a point where that was great, and then the slow season happened, and I sat there. I'm like, I need to find another way. So I took a risk. I opened an office, and it's doubled my income. It's helped, but it's a big risk.
Yeah.
It's like going to college,
Right?
And a lot of people that I know that are in retail, or they're stuck in that third way where it's like in between these really crappy corporate jobs that are low end, like if they're in retail, fast food, supermarkets, Walmart, that type of deal, where it's like, yeah, you could get benefits, you could do okay, but there's no future for that. And you either have to take the trade pill, or you have to take the college pill, or you have to really risk your own thing and go on your own.
Sure.
And I have friends that are in the trades, and their bodies are going to be broken if they keep going. They'll retire at 50, 60, maybe 70 the way today is. I think now you have to be 72 to claim Social Security in the United States. So your body's going to be broken.
Yeah.
Now, you could go the college route, but pick wisely and choose wisely. Now, my degree, I had mass communication. I specialized in production. And I took all the radio stuff. While I was in college, they were actively cutting my major. So a lot of the production classes that I could have taken were cut, or they were reduced in difficulty. So I had to make up for that and say, okay, well, I'm already halfway through this. I have to do something to keep my skills alive, because they didn't require. So if you took intro audio and then advanced audio, you could take intro audio production your freshman year and then take advanced audio your senior year. If you don't do anything between those 4 years, you're screwed. And I knew a lot of kids like that. I was sitting in advanced audio. Now, at the time, I was like 2 or 3 years into producing this podcast, so I knew what to do. And I saw, kids that took it audio 1 3 years ago, they don't even remember how to save a file. Like, that was a huge problem of the university had where they didn't mandate continuance of the skill throughout the educational process. So it depends, like, school is school, how your major is and what your major is.
Right.
It's very, college and trades can end up in the same way, where your body's broken and you're screwed because you either made the wrong choice or you chose the wrong trade. If you're a union carpenter, your back is shot.
Sure.
A friend of mine's a union carpenter. He would agree.
Yeah.
And, if you're a union electrician and you're just laying the wire, or you're the union light fixturer in the electrician's union, you're fine.
You bring up a really good point, right? And especially with social media, these are two contentious points. It's like, the people who are more on the trade side of things, like, oh, you're going to go to college and you're going to be in debt, right? And but you bring up a point, and one of my social science professors, his dad was a carpenter, and he talked about this a lot, where, his dad's like 65, his knees are shot. He needs knee replacement, hip replacement. And, you make good money.
Medical debt,
right. So, I guess it's half dozen of the other. With a college education, you might work out of an office or professional environment, and you might be able to save your body. But, there's going to be some college debt. And with the trades, you might blow out your knee or blow out your back. So, those not
you could
saying
also die.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying one is good or over the other, but I think there's just, a universal truth here is that there's a lack of awareness of that future when people are thinking about going into these industries, right? So if you think about going to college, as an 18-year-old, high school graduate, I'm just going to take out loans, my parents could pay for it or whatever. Like, at the end of the road, even though university puts you through, taking out a loan, this is what you're going to incur, this is the future. Like, you sit through webinars and videos and training, but I don't think that registers,
No.
quite a bit until after you graduate, and the loan comes due, and you see, I have a $350 monthly payment for school loans. that hits them, and then as you say with the trades, it's, you get into a union, you could get, you can make a lot of money. But going into it, I don't think there's an awareness that it's one accident and that's it, game over. A friend of mine, he was doing landscaping, and he was cutting down a tree and it hit him in the head. He's disabled now for the rest of his life. He's my age, and so that he's game over. He's not able to work. So you're right. I guess the takeaway here is, people should really understand the future of what they're getting into, because when you're young, you're invincible. Nothing's going to happen to me. But the truth is, yes, at some point, something is going to happen to you.
I'm even in favor of letting post-high school graduates have a year or two to just really think and make a game plan.
A gap year.
Because a gap year. And I went into college right away. My parents, I was always college. And then my senior year, I was like, what do I want to do? And then I didn't know. I was like, maybe I'll be a mechanic. Maybe I'll do this. I don't know. And my parents were like, you're going to school. You're going to school. And then at the time, I was like, all right. I went through all these AP classes. I have a crap load of credits. Like, I'll just go. I was trained to go to college. If I go to a trade right now, I'm going to look like a moron. Like, what's the point? And I'm happy with my choice. I'm happy with the way it worked out. But I know a lot of kids that it didn't work out that way, or they went to school halfway and then they gave up and they're still trying to figure it out. Yeah. And that's, I think the maturity aspect of it, you need to be a little more mature before you really figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the kind of person you are. But
yeah.
You make a good point. Taking a gap year, totally valid. It gives you time to mature and to figure things out. Because if you're going from a highly structured, situation like high school, right? You have to be there, right? It's by law you have to be there. You know what your homework is. You know what's expected. You have to hit all these state, test mandates or whatever. But, when you, in a flip of a switch, you're going from, an 18-year-old in high school to being an 18 or 19-year-old in college. And when you're in college, like I teach a freshman seminar class, right? And part of that is you're in college now. If you want to be successful, it's on you. Your parents call me. By law, I can't speak to them. Like, you want to be, you're here because you want to be. You're paying to be here. Your parents are paying you to be here. You don't show up for class, no one's coming to look for you. The truant officer's not showing up. So, I see a lot of students drop out quickly because they're not sure. They get overwhelmed very quickly. And we're still dealing with the cohort of students coming out of COVID, right? So the graduating class of 2024 is the cohort of high school students that didn't have a graduation because they were remote learning. And the last 4 years of students coming into the system have had some shortcomings in social development and self-reliance, and it's caused a lot of difficulties for them.
Like what?
Just being on your own on a college campus. Being on your own, being by yourself. You're with your friends at home when you're in high school, and now let's say you traveled, or you're now across the country, or you're away from home. A lot of students they have difficulty adjusting to that kind of thing. And like I was saying, they're on their own. They have to make sure they get up and go to class. They have to figure out their own pace to get their homework done and get their schoolwork done. Right? It's not like mom and dad are going to be there. Hey, make sure you get your work done. It's on you. So if you don't have the maturity, to keep up with that, and you fall behind, it's really difficult to dig yourself out of that hole.
Oh yeah, I mean I know a lot. Now I went to a party school, so I know a lot of kids that they were just snorting coke, they were drinking, and then they were gone next semester.
What school did you say you were going to?
Oneonta.
One on tap?
One, yeah.
That is a party school.
That or Oneonta, whichever was easier.
That's a new one.
Yeah. Oneonta. I remember my mom was like, "Oh, you love Oneonta." My mom thought I smoked pot all through through high school, and I didn't. So I just like looked like I was stoned all the time. So she thought I was stoned. She's like, "Oh, you love Oneonta," and I'm like, "Wait, what is that?" And lo and behold, I ended up loving it when I toured it. But I mean, there were kids, they would get way too carried away. Yeah. Like, way too carried away. I knew guys that they would join frats, and it was just blow 3 days a week, drinking every night, and 2.5, 2.6, just doing everything they could to be at the minimum. It was bad. All the kids that, and what really sucked about my major is that you'd get all the kids that didn't give a crap about anything. Like, they would come to mass communications or business because they were the easiest majors. Easiest. Because now for me, I would go above and beyond. So to me, it was like, okay, I know this is easy to me, but if you didn't want to apply yourself, you didn't have to. And it would show. You'd get a 2.7, you'd get a 2.8, but if you applied yourself, you'd get a 3.5, 3.6. And these kids would just sit there like this in lecture halls. They wouldn't take production classes. They would take all the writing stuff, the paper stuff, because you didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to create anything. You didn't have to think critically. It was just like, if you say this makes someone mad. Like, I swear to God, that's like half of the written classes.
Sure.
So, I'd see a lot of kids fail out because they weren't ready for it, or they just got caught up in the drinking and the drug aspect of it, which was sad. And I can only imagine it's probably worse with COVID, with the COVID kids coming out of it, because it's like you have all the new stuff that happens when you're in college, like access to all these things your parents would normally say, no, you can't do. You have all that on top of, I don't know how to talk to people.
Right. So, I mean, listen, everything I'm saying is mostly anecdotal, right?
Right.
But a lot of the students are, they're introverts, right? They don't know how to socially interact. So that means, are they going to parties? Are they out there doing drugs and drinking? I don't know.
Do they talk in class?
Some do. There's some outgoing students, but the majority of them really don't. I have to drag things out of them. But then again, I'm involved with computer science students, right? So it's somewhat different. They're more, I don't know how I'd say, but more cerebral. They've been around computers. It's what's coming into college now? Gen Z, Gen A.
End of Gen Z, beginning of Gen A.
Yeah, and so they're digital natives. They grew up communicating online with their phones. Right? There's less face to face, and it shows.
It's weird being. So I'm technically Gen Z. I was born January 31st, 99. So it's just very like, I grew up playing outside. I had a flip phone in 4th grade, but that's because I went to public school. My parents were like, I used to go to Catholic school until 3rd grade, and my parents were like, public school dangerous, here's a phone. And I'm like, okay. And I had like this LG, I barely used it. I just text my mom when I was on the bus, and that was it. And I was in 8th grade when I got my first iPhone. And, so I remember like all these like the development of technology, but it's very weird seeing like the iPad kid, that type of generation. Because I was 15 when I saw my first iPad kid. I was working in a restaurant, I was a busboy, and there was a big round table about the size of this one. And there were 5 kids, 5 iPads came out, and I'm looking at this, I'm like, well, how are they supposed to talk? Like, and they have the headphones on. I'm like, well, how are they supposed to? I thought this was like a family activity. Like, what? It was such a departure from how I grew up, that it was like, and I sound like an old man saying this, but it's like things change so fast. You feel old talking about stuff that was maybe the norm 10, 15 years ago. Whereas now it's like, I sound like my grandfather talking about the Great Depression. I mean,
No, I hear you. I'm right smack in the middle, being Gen X, and I'm right in between, the millennials and the boomers, and it's a very interesting spot, generation.
My dad's Gen X.
Yeah, and but like what you're talking about was a blink of an eye to me. So it's like, oh, the kids have phones, blink, and it's like, oh, now they're adults and they're entering the workforce, and now. They don't talk to each other. But you know what? As a I went through a lot of management training, and they really talk about the generational differences and how you manage them, right? And there's really strategies that how you interface with people of different age groups, and it's true. With the boomers, they don't interface with technology, and then you have the millennials and Gen Z coming in, and they embrace technology and they love it, but socially and how you interact with them, like they'd rather have a chat with me on Slack, right, or Discord than a face-to-face.
Really?
So how you manage those age groups is much different.
Yes. I mean, I take a boomer approach with face-to-face, even in business. Like, I'll hand a business card. I would prefer. I had a client reach out to me and they're like, "Oh, would you like to record a video to introduce yourself to the staff and blah blah." I'm like, "No, I'll meet you guys in person. I would rather in person. I'd rather sweat through my shirt nervous than create a video and say, "Hi, I'm so and so. I'm going to take care of you and you'll never see me again." Bye. So, I guess I'm an anomaly, but like I've seen guys, Gen X boomer, they don't even know how to send a PDF file. And then at the opposite end, I'll interview people. And it's so weird interviewing people to work for me and they're my age. It's very weird, and I can now understand the whole people don't want to work mentality. I actually can appreciate that because it's very true. I had a kid come in here once, and he was like, he was interested in a sales position, and he comes in here and he tries to sell me on why he should be my audiovisual guy.
Okay, good approach.
Good approach. I said that was a really great approach. That's why you'd be a perfect salesman. And he was like, yeah, but I'm like, no, I'm looking for a salesman. And then he starts telling me how to run my business. And I'm like, my brother in Christ, you work at Lowe's. I mean, it's just so I was just like, no, that's not how we do things. So I can appreciate when people say people don't want to work anymore because it's like, this is the job. This is what I'm offering. Like, if it was anything else, I would mention it. I can appreciate asking, but like pushing it is like, and that's something my generation does a lot of. I've done it. Like I'm guilty of it. I'm so guilty of that.
It's human nature,
Yeah.
It's human nature. Some people hustle, some people, there's just so many different personalities types. Some guys just happy making the widget, pushing the button, and not having, drive to advance a career, to be doing something different in 5-10 years. They just want to push the button and make the widgets, and that's and they're happy with that. And you know what? Society needs that. You need the people that do those things that, are maybe just mind-numbing scut work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we need someone to build the colleges, right?
True, but you have to be very skilled in construction. And I've been involved in a lot of construction projects. In my tenure at the school, I think we've put up, I want to say 8 buildings, right? So we've expanded the footprint. And I've been part of the project management team of those buildings, at least from a technology standpoint, because after you build it, you got to fill it with, data ports and networking gear and computers and Wi-Fi. So I've been involved with the whole process. And, building a building is pretty complicated.
Now, how's that worked with, networking and routing a building with internet and telephone and networking software? I mean, that's changed a lot. So, like, how is it easier now or is it more complicated?
You say it's changed a lot, but it really hasn't, right? I apply Moore's law again to it, right? Mm-hmm. So, when you're putting in a building, the walls are open, right? So, you look around your office, you've got, I see at least 8, 12, bunch of data jacks, right? Mm-hmm. The walls are open. It's easier to snake those wires. They go back to a central location and they connect to network gear, a stack of network switches and routers or whatever. And the really thing that's only changed is they get faster. They can move data at a higher rate. The data ports go from 10 meg to 100 meg to a gig, now maybe 10 gig. And then the media changes, using Cat 3, Cat 5, Cat 6, or fiber optic. You go from multimedia to multi-mode to single mode. It's just, you're just pushing data faster. But, I could still take a computer from 30 years ago, plug it into that port, and as long as I'm running the right protocol, I could get on the internet. I could talk to other things. So that hasn't changed too much. What changes are the computers and the software on the computers, and the applications that you use. That's what really has changed and drove forward. It's an argument. You could argue the point a little bit, but the base of like communication technology hasn't changed much.
Wow. Huh, that's impressive. I mean, and this is a field that very much fascinates me because everything is connected. I would have loved to have, I'm actually in talks with an IT company right now where I'm going to try to subcontract them and sell their stuff through my company because I'd love to be a full service media company. Mm-hmm. I mean, and you think about it, it's like to have what we're doing here, you need people that have networking. You need networking. I mean, even with electricity. I mean, I wouldn't be able to power the board without electricity. It's amazing how all this stuff kind of comes together to create like a final product. There was another point I wanted to bring up too.
Sure.
When we were talking about careers, and it's I'm trying to have it not slip my mind. But going back to like a third way, I feel like a lot of people too, when they try to go for the third way option, They don't realize, like, drop shipping was a big thing. Or even what I do is a big thing, social media management. But it's like they've changed so much since they've started. Uber used to be easy to get into. Now it's very difficult to get into.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. You need a certain car within a certain year frame. It's got to be 4-door. You have to have security cameras in it. You have to pass a background check. You got to get fingerprinted.
Wow.
You have to register as a 1099. It's a whole big deal. You can't just go and do it. I think you even have to have a minimum amount of hours a week. It's a huge thing. There's no such thing as a side hustle anymore.
Right.
There's no such thing. It's a business or a second job. That's what it's become in the last 5 years. So when social media management became a thing about 5 years ago, it was seen as a joke, and it was a joke. It was like there was no video, really no video aspect. It was literally like, oh, I'll take pictures for you and I'll post it online, with like no understanding of the science of social media. It wasn't until COVID that social media management actually became a viable career for someone to do. And podcasting became a multi-billion-dollar industry at the time, probably a year or two before COVID. And then COVID, it solidified itself as a here-to-stay industry that could compete with radio. And it was very crazy. It just changed like so quickly. So it became this market, and people advanced in podcasting. It didn't just become the audio version. When I started, it was mostly just audio. Mm-hmm. Video became a thing. So now you need to know how to produce video. Now you needed 4K cameras. Now you needed to promote it. So then you needed a producer. Now you need this. Now you need the professional lighting. Now you need a studio because this guy has a studio. A lot of the digital media became keeping up with the Joneses, much like Uber was keeping up with the Joneses. Guys used to bring dash cams in for their own security, or they'd have their own security system for their own security. Now it's standard because everyone did it. It got wind to corporate. Corporate mandated everyone in Uber have those. With my industry, it's industry standard. You expect to see 3-point lighting. You expect to see cameras. You expect to see a certain quality that wasn't present when the industry first started. And much like everything changes. But things that we're seeing, even drop shipping. Drop shipping used to be seen as a get-rich-quick thing. And for a very small amount of time it was, until it became oversaturated. So a lot of these industries, be it Uber, DoorDash, social media management, drop shipping, web development, they all became oversaturated. And I'm assuming within the next year or two, there's going to be a market correction within all of these. Because if you remember, web development and website design was very oversaturated. Everyone was developing websites in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. Everyone was. And then it stopped. Everyone just stopped developing it. And then it shrunk down to a core group of people that know how to do web development. I'd say it shrunk by 25%. So now you have a much lesser pool of competition if you're going to do web development or web design, because the skill needed to do it has increased dramatically, which is why it's, in some cases, if you want an interactive website, it's $10,000.
Right. I mean, to your point, with all these industries starting up and, becoming more professional, more developed, what's your opinion on, what's the driving factor to that? Is it, you need a better product? Is there government regulation involved in that? I mean, I could certainly see that with something like Uber, and with website development, you have accessibility, right? If your website is not accessible to people with disabilities, oh, that's a fine, right? As a matter of fact, there are just people that will just go out to sue you.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't comply with these regulations.
That's a whole industry in and of itself.
Right.
It's a multi-million-dollar industry.
Yes.
So to repeat your question, so you're basically saying what's the driving force for people getting involved in these industries?
The driving force, or you made an example, especially with Uber, it'd just be a guy in his car who drive around, and then it's, you have to be 1099, you have to do a background check, you have to do cameras. What's a driving force for these new industries? And where they're going to be so well defined, well developed, right? Is it like a regulation? Is it just staying competitive? You have to expand and build up.
It's staying competitive. So people get involved with these industries because they are looking. They're either in the middle road that we were talking about earlier, where they're in retail, they're in fast food, they're in food service, and they're not in a good restaurant. They're in a crappy restaurant, not making a lot of tips, and they're like, I want to do something more with my life. I'm not college oriented and I don't want to swing a hammer. So they go for the side hustle and hopefully into making it a full-time business. So they start, back then it was, okay, I'll do Uber on the weekends or when I have off from work to get some extra income, and it could be fun. So they'll do that for a little bit. Or they'll be like, you know what, I've always liked, social media. I think it's a cool concept. I'd like to see if I can make a business out of it. Let me try influencing. Influencer marketing is dying, by the way. It's actually collapsing. It's so yes, it's actually really garbage. It's actually dying. You're an idiot if you do that in 2024. But some people go to social media management route, like, oh, let me see if I could do advertising for companies. But they won't come at it from advertising. They'll be like, let me just post for them because everyone needs someone to post. And, it's a pain in the ass to post. That's why I get paid for it.
Sure. I have a small social media presence. I'm on X, I'm on Instagram, and every once in a while, some company will approach me like, "Hey, you want to be an ambassador for our product?" Delete.
Yeah.
But it's out there. Companies are recruiting to push some garbage product.
Exactly. Now, this was when all these industries started up. People were like dipping their toes in it, and then more and more people did that because economic constraints got worse. Mm-hmm. So. During, the COVID period especially, a lot of people were like, DoorDashing became huge. Instacart became huge. Uber became huge. Well, not so much Uber, but Uber.
Yeah.
And Lyft and all of them. So there was this huge influx. And overnight, these startups that were just doing it as like a small business, or maybe they wanted to be like a Fortune 1000, they became Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 10 companies. So then it was like, oh, crap, like we need compliance because there's people getting sexually assaulted in our Uber rides, or there's Uber drivers getting stuck up with a gun, or our Instacart people are getting robbed in the street, or they're they're taking food from people and saying, oh, my bad. Or you have social media guys that, they'll charge you. They still do this. A lot of social media companies still do this, and I'll get into that in a second, but they'll overcharge and underdeliver. So you have all these like, oh, crap, that comes with expanding. So now they had to regulate more. They had to be more professional. And that's when it became more like a full-time job because you needed to buy the camera. You needed to have a car that was a certain amount, a certain type. You needed to have this. You needed to have that. So the side gig, because it blew up and everyone heard about it and because people aren't original, everyone flocked to it. To meet an economic demand, now it became a full-time job pretty much. So that's kind of – now I could see it continuing to grow, but I think Uber and Lyft are going to plateau. If not kind of decline, because there's so much work needed to start up. You always needed a 1099 with it, but it's now, I think there's a 10-hour minimum you need to drive. You need a car in a certain amount of certain condition between certain years. Has to be a certain type of car, can't be a pickup truck. It's got to be, you got to have a background check. The rating system is very stringent, so if you don't get 5-star ratings consistently, you're going to be knocked down lesser and lesser until you're gotten rid of off the platform, which is good and bad. With social media management now and media companies in general, there's going to be a market correction in the next, I believe, 2 years because a lot of media companies overcharge and they underdeliver. So what they'll do is, so one of my packages is the basic social media package. I come in once a month. I film as long as you want for the entire 24-hour period. I get as much content as I can in that day, and I post it throughout the month. And I manage all your social medias to make sure nothing's getting hacked. People aren't being jackasses in the comments. I'm posting every day. I'm managing your whole presence, right? And that's why I'm an escort because, for legal reasons, you're managing someone's identity. So, I want to make sure I'm protected. But a lot of companies, that package that I just offered, it's $750 a month, okay? A lot of companies will charge $1,500, $2,000 for one shoot and to manage the whole thing. I'm catering to small businesses. Right.
That'd be my next question is like what's your area of expertise or your size?
And most of these guys are catering to small businesses and they're banging them over the head for $1,500, $2,000. I charge a flat fee for websites. I know I could probably charge $10,000 for a website. I charge a flat fee of $2,000 for an unlimited amount of pages, and I try to help you with as much as I can. Most people charge $5 to $10. When it comes to graphic design, some people will charge $100 an hour, $200 an hour. I charge $75, and you have to pay printing and shipping costs, but I charge $75 an hour for the labor. Videography, I charge $500 a video. And then it's $100 an hour after the fact, but that all includes post-production. So you're paying for the shooting time, but you get the included after the shoot, the post-production's included in that. And you get 2 or 3 videos out of that. And you get some social media reels so you can put content out there. Most guys will charge $800 to $1,000. So it's just, even podcasts. I subcontracted with a company. One 1-hour podcast for once a quarter was $875. And it was recorded on cameras that are 12 years old. The lighting barely worked, and one of the tripods is taped together. So it's like, a lot of the market correction is not that. What's interesting about my field is there's not an overhead CEO that owns a bunch of subcontractors. It's a bunch of subcontractors that are gonna fuck around and find out, and they're gonna see a lot of people shift away from them. I'm not a LaTip member, but I was invited to one. And I just said, hey, I do social media management and marketing, and I heard like a collective groan.
Could you mentioned LaTip? What is that?
LaTip is it's a networking group that you have to pay for, and it's pretty much like you're the salesman for other people in the room. So you pay $500 for the national membership, and then you pay another $500 for your chapter, and then you have to pay $1 every time you don't get a tip or a lead generated for another client. Okay. So if I don't get you someone to buy a action figure that you have, I have to give the group $1, and I have to generate 5 tips a month. So if I don't generate 5 tips a week, excuse me. So if I don't generate a tip for you, I have to pay. And then if I miss 5 tips, if I don't generate leads for a whole month, I get kicked out, I don't get a refund, and I lose $1,000. Now, I personally don't have time to be someone else's salesman. I'm trying to be my own salesman. I don't know plumbing. I don't know HVAC. I don't know landscaping. I can't, you know what I mean? So, and the good thing about LaTip is that there can only be one type of person per group. So, if there was no media guy, and I do everything media related, I'd be the media guy for the group. You have to come through me. You have to recommend me. I don't have to compete with 3 other social media guys.
I got you.
Yeah. Right. So LaTip is that.
Sounds similar to some organizations that I've been involved in over the years. Not quite stringent, but usually the events are just networking events.
Yeah.
It's. Like I thought I'd go to something and be like, oh, we're going to talk about this technology topic. This CEO or CIO is going to speak. But it came down to, it was just a bunch of vendors giving out cards or people job searching. Oh, yeah. Like, this is my area of expertise. Here's my card. Hire me for your company. So
I am part of a great networking group called 516 Ads, and I've generated a lot of business from them. And it was $300 for the year.
Yeah,
and
it could be valuable.
Great, very valuable service. But, you'll have groups like a BNI and IBO, and it's kind of like what we were describing or what you described. It's not my thing. For a college, I guess, I don't know how you would join. Like, what type of networking group would you be a part of?
So, I wouldn't necessarily, it's higher ed specific, but it's like industry within the higher ed, right? So, let's say admissions, right? There's a national industry, it's called NISACAC. And, they do just that kind of thing. They have conferences and they exchange information, what's going on, make connections, things like that. For technology, there's something on Long Island called ListNet. And it's they have meetings and conferences and you go to and you meet other technology companies that might give you a service, or you meet other people, so it's more like things like that are more in the technology sector.
I see.
So, next month I'm going to a conference upstate New York with with an organization called NiserNet. I'm actually on their planning board. There's a yearly CIO conference that I help plan. And, their whole thing is higher ed technology in New York State. So it's a consortium. Get you better deals on things, networking opportunities. And this particular conference is, more around like what's hot in higher ed IT leadership, right? So what's going on? What do you need to be aware of? What are the opportunities for you to educate and learn? So, those are some of the professional organizations that I belong to. So, NISERNet, ListNet, EDUCAUSE, which is a national a national organization, and it's I get connected with other people from other universities, from technology. I actually used to be part of a planning board. We had something. It was a technology conference for higher ed in like the Long Island tri-state area, and it used to be the New York Higher Education Technology Forum, and we ran that for 6 or 7 years. And I would talk to like system administrators, networking guys from like Hofstra and Stony Brook and St. Joseph's, and I learned a lot. Like, what are you doing? What is your common challenge that we have? And what did you do to figure that out? Here's a company that you can hire and help you solve your problem.
So what is a common challenge that Adelphi faces when it comes to what you do?
Well, with technology, cybersecurity is one. That's a big challenge for any industry. Like you said, with you were just saying not getting your social medias hacked, but something like ransomware. There was a college, I don't remember the name, but there was a college, I think it's somewhere in the Midwest, and their systems all got cryptoed. And
wow.
The cost of reconstituting their data was more than their operating budget. They shut down.
Wow.
They just closed their doors. So, you have to have, cybersecurity is on everybody's mind. Common challenges, enrollment. Again, if your enrollment dips, there's less funding, you can't do certain things. Staff retention. I lost a lot of good people during COVID. I had several core engineers that actually built our cutting edge virtual infrastructure, and they left. And it took me a long time to hire new people. And even when I hired those new people, it took well over a year to get them trained to our technology. So for that period, I wasn't as productive. I wasn't turning out as many projects, as much work, because I was teaching people as I was keeping the lights on.
Right.
So, there's so many more challenges, but those are the top ones that come to mind.
Jesus Christ. Especially in today's world, too. We're seeing a lot of foreign cyber attacks through
Absolutely.
That's a major concern. I think there was a health company that got attacked by Chinese group. There was I think it was not Aetna. I think Northwell got attacked.
I believe so. Northwell Health. Someone I know who worked in that arena. It was it might be something tangentially related, but it was actually the company that processed the payments for the health industry. So they got frozen for months. Wow. It happened, I think, back in March, and they couldn't process payments.
Jesus Christ, that's actually That's a smart way to attack it.
Yeah,
that's a smart way to attack it.
Yeah, usually it's like they take over your system, or they send you a threat. Hey, we're going to take your web presence offline if you don't pay us $15,000 in Bitcoin. So it's either that or it's ransomware. They get in, they encrypt everything, and to decrypt it, you got to pay $1 million or whatever. So these hacker groups they do it to make money. So
they fund their foreign wars.
Yeah.
And then there's also schools have been attacked locally. There's been ransomware is a big deal, and especially like with me, like someone hacks into a client's presence. That's why I'm incorporated, because it's like
you can't carry that liability personally.
No. And
that's
a lot
smart.
of these guys, what they do in my industry is they'll be like an LLC at most, or they'll be a DBA. And it's like you need the most amount of protection, because God forbid, most people, like I'd be able to work through it with them. I'd be in constant communication. We'd fix the problem. But God forbid you work for a major corporation where you don't have that personal relationship, and something like that happens. Even if you do have a personal relationship, that's a major corporation. You are screwed. Even with like a small business, they could still go all the way. Even if you have the best relationship in the world, you always want to cover your bases.
Absolutely.
No matter what. So, if I do have other people that are interested or are involved with social media management marketing, please incorporate and save yourself a legal headache, because that can happen. I'm surprised it hasn't happened already with ransomware attacks, where they haven't tried to destroy social media presences yet. But it's going to come, because that's we're already at war, and it's being fought digitally.
Yeah. It's either financial gain, right? Mm-hmm. Like the motivation fact is it's financial gain, where like you take hold of a company's assets and you hold it hostage, give us money, you might get it back. you mentioned political. Sometimes we'll have a speaker at the school, and it might be from another place in the world, and they'll talk about something, very politically charged, and there'll be protests. They're coordinated online, or your website might be a target for being hacked. I think many years ago we had someone from Taiwan speak, and we were worried about Chinese government coming in and doing something to our infrastructure. We're a small school, so nothing really happened, but it's always out there. And I think the third thing is, we see a lot of stuff coming from Chinese, and they're going after government installations, higher ed, because they're looking for intellectual property, right? They're looking for secrets.
Yeah.
So that universities have a lot of research, right? And that's why you have a lot of cybersecurity protections around it. Like like a school like Stony Brook, they do a lot of R&D and research, and they hold patents. So that intellectual property is valuable to them. So those are just the motivating factors behind a lot of that kind of thing.
Wow. Well, I mean, okay. Well, man, I want to pick your brain more, but we've been at it for a while. So until next time, Fred, thank you so much for coming on Backpacking America. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Anthony.
Anytime. Do you have any final words for the people out there?
Final words of wisdom. I think it just goes along with getting yourself into, your future. Just know what it looks like coming out of the other end. Don't have surprises, and do your best.
Awesome. Fred, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks,
and for all our listeners, thank you for listening to episode 293 of Backpacking America. We're approaching our 5-year anniversary, so something special will be planned soon. And until next time, thank you.